Welcome to the Homeschool Mom support group over in Facebook. I am here at 2:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday, and I answer various homeschool mom questions and give you tools to help you address the common homeschool mom experiences. So today I'm going to have a conversation with you about boundaries. I've chosen this time of year because it's a common conversation to discuss boundary challenges when holidays are happening, because we are mixing with more people. And I'm curious if you resonate, or maybe this isn't pertinent for you. You've figured out or sorted out your relationship challenges with all the important people in your life. But if you have had experiences where you're wondering what other people think, or you're worried that someone's going to start quizzing your child at the Thanksgiving table, or maybe you're wondering if you could get more me time or more time for yourself and actually create more margins in your day, or if you're wondering if everyone is doing this many extracurricular activities of their homeschool and you definitely would love to actually be homeschooling, like being at home, or if you also wonder what people do about their phones while they're doing their homeschool routine, if they put them in another room or if they do what I did, which was not put them in the other room and answer Facebook messages while you're trying to do a math lesson. If you resonate with any of these things, or you just resonate with the idea of a boundaries discussion for homeschool moms, then I'm glad you're here. I'd love to hear about you, who you're homeschooling, and what boundary challenges you might have. You can always send me a DM if you don't feel comfortable sharing in the comments below. That's why I'm here, is to help you shed what's not working so you can show up in your homeschool and your life more purposefully. I say more authentically, more confidently, and more purposefully. I have, for myself, about 2 decades ago, actually exactly 2 decades ago, began my story or my journey of learning what boundaries really meant in my life. And I've discovered that boundaries aren't just about saying no, though sometimes they are. It's not just about putting limitations on people. Sometimes it's putting limitations on our activities so that we're protecting our energy, protecting our time, and helping us to show up more intentionally. But there's, I think, the boundary discussion, as soon as I start talking about boundaries and relationships, I think it's more than just limitations or putting limitations on ourselves or on other people. When we create boundaries in our relationships, both with ourselves, our relationship with ourselves, and in our relationships with the other people in our world, we get a clearer sense of ourself. We get a clearer sense of who we are. Our identity gets clearer. We're more confident and certain of ourselves. We're not questioning ourselves the same way. We don't ask ourselves if we have to do all the things that everybody's doing, because we know that it just doesn't fit our lifestyle to do everything that everyone else is doing. So we just choose what matters to us. We don't get worried or concerned about the things that other people seem to be preoccupied with. So today I'm going to have a conversation, a kind of a flyover conversation about boundaries and how we can create boundaries that will directly impact your energy store to help maintain your energy and really increase the quality of your homeschool family life. I'm curious what you understand the word boundaries to mean, because it's been so used so frequently that it's such a colloquial term that sometimes we don't necessarily mean the same thing. So I'm curious what you would say. What does the word boundary mean to you? I'd love to hear, especially in the context of the homeschool mom life. So as I was sharing, I think there's certain signs that you might need stronger boundaries. If you're feeling overwhelmed all the time, or you feel like you can't find time for yourself, you really do know that you're scrolling or on the screen more than you need to be. But for that person that's listening right now, you do not have to get off the screen, because I just identified that. But sometimes you have a spider sense that you're probably spending too much time with your screen, scrolling. Or maybe you are having a challenge with a relationship and you see that it continues to recur. You keep seeing it happening over and over, the same pattern of relating, and you aren't getting, a practical approach to dealing with it and really actually finally rendering that issue. Or maybe you are wondering, what are other people thinking about my homeschool choice? I see that, these are all possible signs that you might need stronger boundaries. But I have noticed that there is a connection between our dislike that we don't have supportive people in our lives around our homeschool choices. And it's not to say that we shouldn't want that. Of course, we should want supportive people in our lives, period. But there is this like almost a recoil when people aren't accepting or supportive of that choice. And I get that sometimes people are just critical and it's not very, satisfying. But also, we all choose different things for different reasons. And when we make a choice to do something like homeschooling, it isn't on the beaten path. And so people do want to know why, like what compels you to make such a big choice to be off the beaten path. And so I think there's sometimes value to ask ourselves, why does it matter what other people think, that they're not supportive of us or that they don't agree with everything that we think? Because it's a different thing and people are going to be curious about the choices that we make. We all have been told that there's a certain way that kids learn, and there is a format, or there's so many layers of ways to educate a child, whether it's incorporating all the basic discussion points like grades and testing and, having certain learning outcomes by a certain age. And there's so many possible discussion points I could go here, but there's very many things that we've accepted as standard education approach for children. And because of that, because everybody's had that exposure, it's kind of inevitable that people are going to say, but why are you homeschooling? Why? And if we are feeling resentful that we're not being supported, or if we aren't 100% confident as to why we're doing what we're doing, then we will naturally feel defensive. And I think this discussion point right here about how we feel defensive and experiencing people on repeat questioning us, it actually can lead to a stronger sense of self just by itself. When we hear people on repeat questioning us in any area of our life, and we're certain that this thing really is the best thing for our family, it's the best thing for a specific child, then if we are practicing our reasons, spending time with ourselves and saying, what is it? What is the reason that we're doing this again? And, going back to the why, as they say, and also entertaining some of the questions and uncertainties that people have and say, yeah, they're concerned about this. Am I concerned about that? No. Why might they be concerned about that? If they're someone that is supportive in general in your life and loving and connected to you, and they are genuinely asking you, then it serves to answer the question why you're actually doing this thing. And as you continue to work through all the questions that you may have from other people, you actually build a greater sense of confidence. You're like, I get it. People don't see things the same way that I do, but I'm actually okay with that. And then what happens when you are okay with that, when people don't see the world the same way you do, but you can also give them the answers for why you're doing what you're doing, as time goes by, it bolsters your sense of self. Outside of any homeschool discussion, you're okay with people not thinking the same way that you do. You're okay with them asking you questions about certain things. You don't get defensive, you just answer. Of course, there is a time, I think, to vet the person that's asking. Just ask yourself, is this person genuinely supportive, really does care about my child or about me? And they're not doing this just to, spout off opinions like somebody on the internet just says whatever they think. If they genuinely care, then have the conversation. If they don't genuinely care, then why do you feel like you have to answer it anyways? What is the unhealthy connection with that person that makes you feel compelled to keep giving them answers or have a discussion or express your energy or even share your energy with another person? So I think the energy we have for homeschooling too, I'll stop there and say, what do you think? I'm curious your thoughts right there. How your experience of that question, the questioning around your homeschool choice influences your feelings about yourself and the choices that you make. I'd love to hear. I also think boundaries really matter because the energy we have for homeschooling is directly tied to the boundaries we set. So we're not just protecting and nurturing relationships, but we're protecting our time and our energy. We're teaching our kids how to do it too. When we have boundaries around our time, we're saying certain things matter and certain things don't. And though, say, for example, the extracurricular discussion, you could choose, assuming that you had the financial ability to choose whatever you wanted, you could choose to fill every last moment of your day. And would that be a better thing for your child? Because they would have exposure to all the things, and then they could decide if they want to continue doing karate or whether they want to continue to do, I don't know, Duolingo Japanese or a Japanese class or something. These things just come off the top of my head. I was not even thinking I would tell you about those things. But anyways, could they do all these things? And you could say, yes, we can afford to do them all. So we will fill every last minute with extracurricular activities because it seems like everybody else is doing that. You could. And, but like, because what if your child grows up to be a black belt and they will never have become a black belt if you didn't expose them to karate? You get to decide as a homeschool parent. You get to decide what matters, how much time you want to invest in extracurriculars in the first place. You get to decide whether they get exposed to every last activity in the world, which you will not do, but we certainly seem to try. It certainly looks like some of us try very hard. I certainly was one of them. We get to decide what we're going to do with our time. And you and I both know that when we create margins in our days, when we create space for us just to do nothing, to fill it in with things like picking up a book or doing a little puzzle with our kids for 5 minutes or going for a walk. We weren't expecting to go for a walk and then, do a little nature journaling or just notice the birds, notice the sky. Our days feel more at ease. We feel more at peace. So when we create boundaries around our time, we're creating boundaries around our energy. I think there's a few practical ways that we could set boundaries in our homeschool. And tell me if you have incorporated any of these already, because I'd like to hear. I have oodles of possibilities, oodles of things that I could share with you in this discussion. I think the most important, most relevant thing is really something that I could really only do with you in coaching. So if you want to join me in coaching, you're welcome to book a conversation. But really getting to the heart of why whatever boundary issue you have is such a challenge for you. I can't do that with a boundary building checklist. I can't do that with a just a list of here's what you should do to protect your boundaries list. I often find when I'm having conversations with people, especially the first time I have a conversation, the reason that they think they're there for coaching or the reason that they believe they're challenged by something is not usually the base reason. There's so many layers that can be delayered, if that's a word. There's so many layers that you could take away that really help you to see what really matters and what's really causing you concern or what's really your challenge. And I find that for myself when I'm in coaching or therapy, and I've noticed that with the women that I work with. When they're with me and we have a conversation, things get a lot clearer because we can pull back the layers to get to the heart of something. Having said that, I think there are some actionable steps that you can begin with to create or set boundaries in your homeschool family. One is probably the most repeatedly spoken discussion point, and also the reason I even got started in this discussion or in coaching homeschool moms in the first place, because it was my own story and it was very challenging. And it is still the number one thing I hear people talk about as homeschool moms that they are most challenged by. Want to guess? It's actually taking time for yourself separately from your kids. If you can just set aside 15 minutes just to be by yourself, preferably not in earshot of your kids. It could be a walk, it could be going out for a coffee, it could be going to the library, anything. Just that very short, separate time helps you to regather yourself and get clearer on what really matters. It helps you to feel just a little bit more centered or grounded. And it's really hard for homeschool moms to put into their schedules because there's so much other stuff going on. There's so much stuff to do. And I understand that. And you know I understand that because I wrote a book on this, created a podcast on this. I have conversations about this with anyone in my, Confident Homeschool Mom Collective. Every time I have a conversation with a mom, this conversation point comes up, that it is hard to find time to take just for you. And I would suggest to you, you're not going to find it. You have to put it on the schedule. As faithfully to that moment in your day or in your week that you are going to, feed the kids. If you have a baby in diapers, you're going to change the diapers. As faithfully as you do those things, you also need to set aside time for you each week. I hear a lot of moms do this, and so I just want to reiterate that this is a beautiful thing to do, having a quiet time in the afternoon. Some moms will actually set apart an hour or 2 hours and say, okay, kids, the alarm is on. When the alarm goes off, you can come out of your room, or you can come out of the project room, or you need to bring your screens back, all dependent on what you want or allow your kids to do during that time. But creating a quiet afternoon time for you to do anything for you that is outside of attending to kids is super useful for you. If you happen to be a mom that has little kids, say 5 and under, or 3 and under, or an infant, I know that sounds like an impossibility, and it possibly is. But just know that you are in a season of your life, and it really will shift, and you really will get that quiet space again. So hold on. And also try to establish the pattern, even if you don't get it flawlessly, of mommy is going into the other room for 5 minutes and she's unavailable for 5 minutes. The alarm is on the other side of the door, and when the alarm goes off, you can come in and talk to mommy. Obviously, this does not apply to those toddlers and babies, but you know what I mean. I would suggest also putting screens away. Our screens. I remember when Facebook first came into my life, which I don't remember when that was, but that was pretty early in my homeschool years. So Instagram didn't exist. Many things didn't exist. I'm not sure the cell phone existed. No, it did, because my husband had one as a physician, but it wasn't an Apple one, that's for sure. But anyways, way back then when it was pretty much just Facebook, and it was very easy to connect with other homeschool parents. So it wasn't a lovely source of connection, but I found it super distracting when I was in the middle of my formal homeschool routine. So I learned to put it in the other room during the morning. Also, communicating your availability to parents, especially our mothers and fathers and in-laws and the most important people in our lives. When we're busy with a certain activity in our homeschool routine, or really anything at all, we can actually explain to the people that matter to us that we're not available during regular hours or between certain hours. And if that's a challenge for you to assert that with somebody, then I would actually ask you to explore the reasons that it's a challenge, because maybe you need some undergirding. You need to bolster your sense of self and feel more confident in how you want to choose to be in relationship with that person and what you expect of that person and how they relate to you. So we can't control people, but we can certainly assert, this is who I am, this is what I want in relationship, and confidently establish it and maintain that boundary. Sometimes that means inevitable conflict, but it can be done, and you can grow in a stronger sense of yourself so that you actually are confidently asserting those boundaries with whoever that person is. Another area where we want to establish boundaries is within ourselves. One of the ways that we can assert boundaries within ourselves is to ask ourselves, how are we reacting to our kids? And do we want to react the way that we're reacting? if you recognize a pattern in how you're showing up with your kids or anyone, but especially with your kids, and you're saying, I know it's normal for parents to lose their marbles every once in a while, but I really don't like the pattern that I'm engaging here. I can see the regularity that I am having. I'm having these moments. I actually chatted about a specific moment that I had, a very significant moment for me in about my 3rd year of homeschooling, on the podcast today, my Homeschool Mama Self-Care podcast. And I shared the story of waking up late and smelling the coffee that was on my bedside table. There's like a ring of coffee underneath. It was cold coffee. The kids were trying to wake me up because in those years I was not waking up without somebody helping me. I was just so tired of waking up all throughout the night. And it was slump month. It was like gray and dull. And anyways, it was a dark gray day. I'm smelling this coffee beside me, but it's not warm. And I'm hearing the kids arguing in the kitchen. And it turns out they were arguing because they were fighting over the spatula and who was going to flip the pancakes. So the oldest 2 kids were making pancakes in the morning for the other kids that were awake. And I'm grateful. I was thinking, this is so great. My kids are actually making pancakes. But then when I got into the kitchen and they're still fighting over this thing, and then there's like drops of pancake batter everywhere, I'm like, okay, I woke up late. That's not okay. And now there's this conflict. And I just like, this is so not the right day. My head is too heavy. Maybe it was premenstrual. Maybe I had an argument with my husband. Who knows what was going on, but I wasn't feeling great. And I just remember feeling really agitated by the conflict. Are you with me on this? This is like the least exciting part of homeschooling. The one thing that if I could delete it, I would. Even though I have come to understand that kids in conflict means they learn how to deal with conflict. So that's a good thing. It is a good thing. It's a good thing, right? No, I know it's a good thing because I see my kids engaging in conflict in healthy ways now. So I know that it's a useful thing, but dang, it's hard sometimes, right? So I remember them having conflict, me feeling really agitated, but bringing it back to a quiet, peaceful place. Then we went to circle time. And I don't know if it was somebody who's fighting over Lego or fighting over where to sit. Can I sit beside mom? Can I sit beside mom? Something like that. And I just remember okay, it's good. Everybody sit down. And I was being really loud and really intense and noticing that somebody was yelling and then realizing it was me. And spinning on my heels and leaving, knowing that everything that was about to come out of my mouth is probably not going to serve the situation. It's definitely not going to help the kids, and it's not going to help me. So I'm going to have to leave. And so I remember leaving to my room to cool down and texting or getting really angry actually, and texting my husband and saying, I'm so angry and this is why I'm mad. And you've had those moments. I know you have, because I'm listening to other homeschool moms that are saying, yeah, that's me. And so now I'm around enough homeschool moms in the genuinely vulnerable space where they're really sharing their stories that you are alone if this has never happened to you. You're not alone because you got really angry with your kids a bunch of times. No, that's normal homeschool mom experience. Anyways, still, none of us want that, of course. But I went to my room and I'm angrily texting my husband, and he's not responding because he's actually working. And so then I'm texting my good friend and she responds, and rant texting. The more I'm texting, the angrier I'm getting and less effective this conversation is going. And she interrupts it and says, hey, have you seen this video that went viral yesterday? And I'm like, no. And she said, I think you should watch it. So then I told the kids, okay, I'm going to be out in a little bit. Can you just look after people until I come out in about 10 minutes? And I watched this woman in a jean jacket and a black shoes and a beautiful blonde coif. She was talking about how when we don't address who we really are and don't really show up as our authentic self, then we're doing that because we feel ashamed, or we have a deep sense of shame and, are feeling less than or not good enough, worthless, all those feelings. And somewhere in that hour or I guess it was maybe in the first 10 minutes, hour. I don't remember how long this video is, but it's the first Brené Brown YouTube video. And I remember in this video, something shifted inside of me where I realized that I am definitely not taking care of myself. I don't even know who I am or what matters to me. All I can think about is I got to figure out how to check off all the boxes of the things that I think I'm supposed to do for these kids and to be a good homeschool mom. And I'm not obviously doing it if I'm losing my marbles. And I remember watching this video and having this like big, whoa, something has to change here. And that was the moment that things began to change for me. There were many iterations of what changed over the course of time. But in that moment, I definitely realized I didn't know who I was and what I needed. I didn't ask other people to help me because I can do it myself, thank you. And yet I wasn't taking time for myself or doing things for myself or really asking myself, how am I feeling in these moments when I'm feeling really intense? Am I asking myself why I'm having these big emotions in the first place? What are my triggers? What are the thoughts that are happening before I feel triggered? How can I be more proactive in this? None of this was a conversation point until that point. So I think I'm going to leave the practical ways you can set boundaries in your homeschool there, because I actually will share more next Tuesday on a discussion on boundaries in relationship. I have many different discussion points, but it's important for me to hear your stories, hear your context, your experience of these things, because I know my experiences. I am familiar with many other experiences, other homeschool moms' experiences, but I know that if you're here and you're listening this far, that you've got your own story, and everyone's story is as unique as the fingerprints on their hands. So if you want to share your story either in the DMs or in the comments, if you'd like me to address a specific element and have a conversation in next week's Facebook Live at 2:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here in the Homeschool Mama Support Group, then just let me know. Or if you want to book a no obligation conversation with me to explore why you might be challenged by the things you're challenged by and see if coaching might be a useful resource for you, you're welcome to do that. I will put a link down below if you'd like to join me in that conversation. And if, if everything's going really well and you just wanted to hang out with somebody for a little bit, because sometimes the homeschool mom life can be kind of quiet, then I'm glad you're here. If you know another friend that would be supported or encouraged by being in this space, let them know, because I have this barrier. It's called being on a screen, and yet I'm a legit human being that lives in Western Kootenays of the British Columbia, and I have graduated as a homeschool mom, but here is what I do. I help homeschool moms shed what's not working so they can show up intentionally in their lives, and I want to be able to do that and reach more people. So just let them know about this group, and I would be most grateful. I hope you have a beautiful week, and I'll see you next Tuesday.